Alright, you all know who this guy is. I'm not gonna introduce Usain Bolt. He's fast. Like, really fast. He is by far the fastest sprinter I've ever seen. As a fellow runner, I've got nothing but huge respect for his running career. That being said, like many of us mere mortals, he has a dream of playing professional football at the highest level. I mean, who wouldn't want to score that last minute goal at the Champions League final? Let's admit it, we all got lost in our daydreams of playing for our favorite clubs. And Usain Bolt was no different. He grew up supporting Manchester United. But unlike us mere mortals, he was a badass athlete, an Olympian, the fastest man alive. At 6'5", the guy is tall, well built, and has an elite mindset that made him the best athlete in his craft. If there's one guy who could transition to football, it would be him, wouldn't it? Long story long, despite the number of high-profile trials, it just never worked out for this guy. Not at United, not at Borussia Dortmund, not even at the A-League. By the way, that's the Australian League. For you folks that think football doesn't exist outside the Premier League, but that's a rant for another day. But the question is, why did it not work out for Usain Bolt as a footballer? Well, we gotta go back. Way back to 2018 when he finally got his first taste of football at a professional level. It's 2018 and Usain Bolt is dreaming about playing for his beloved Manchester United. However, it's Borussia Dortmund that gives him a 2-day trial, an opportunity that came from their mutual sponsor, Puma. It wasn't his beloved Manchester United, but hey, this was still the top tier of football. Suddenly, the internet was filled with memes of Bolt outrunning everyone on the pitch. I still remember those days. There was a positive publicity about this trial. From outside looking in, everything seemed to be positive. There were more than 1,500 people watching that training session. He even scored a goal, a nice header. Bolt gave himself a 7 out of 10 in his first open training session with Dortmund, and the club promised to give him a realistic assessment of whether he has what it takes to play professionally. And they did just that. Quote, if he wants to make it at the highest level, he still has a lot of work to do. At his age, there's not that much room for development. Ouch. Those are the words said by Peter Schöger, Dortmund's manager at the time. So yeah, he wasn't offered a professional contract by Dortmund. It didn't work out at a top level at football, but you could still start somewhere, right? Which is exactly what happened. Yet again, with the help of his sponsor, Puma, Bolt would join a Norwegian club called Strømsgodset. Yeah, pretty sure I butchered that name. He even played in a friendly game against Norway's under-19 national team, coming on as a second-half substitution. You would think this would be a good chance for him to showcase what he's got in football, especially with a 6'5" Bolt playing against teenage opponents that are physically far inferior compared to him. However, he looked so out of place in that match, wasting the game's best chance with a clumsy header. And it didn't help that his team lost 1-0 against kids. Literally, kids. So yeah, didn't go too well, I guess. Undeterred by this experience, Bolt would continue to look for opportunities, and it was just about time for one to show up. From all the way north in Norway, he would go all the way south, in Australia. In August 2018, on his 32nd birthday, Bolt started training with A-League club Central Coast Mariners. This was a good opportunity for both parties. Bolt would have a chance to realize his dream of playing football at a level that would take him seriously, and the A-League and his club would benefit from the publicity of Usain Bolt playing for them. In no time, he would make his debut from the bench in the second half of a friendly game. And just like the game against the Norway under-19, he really lacked the basics of football skills. Clumsy ball control, lack of awareness, slow to react to situations, which is quite odd considering that he's the fastest man alive. That being said, he would soon get his first start against MacArthur Southwest United. And this time he did better. Well, much better. He actually scored a couple of goals. I mean, look at that finish. That is one fine goal. By the way, just a reminder, don't forget to leave a like or comment. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm, as a lot of time goes into making these videos. I really enjoy reading your comments. Thank you for your love and support. So, where was I? Oh, right. He scores a couple of goals in a friendly match. After that game, he would be offered a 2-year deal by Valletta. That's a club in Malta, which he rejects. He would eventually be offered a deal by the Mariners after staying with them for 2 months, with the Australian FA even helping to fund it. However, this didn't come without controversy. Irish forward Andy Keogh, then playing for Perth Glory, wasn't too nice about it, saying, quote, "He had a touch like a trampoline. He's not gonna be able to make it," arguing that the contract is a kick in the teeth to the actual professionals who have earned it in football, which, honestly, I kinda understand. And he wasn't the only A-League player with that point of view. Nevertheless, despite all this fuss, Bolt and his club couldn't reach an agreement, who couldn't pay his reported $3 million wage demands. Bolt ended up leaving the club. A deal like that required a third party to fund, and that just simply didn't happen for him. He eventually announced to the whole world that he was no longer chasing his dream of becoming a football player, saying that football in Australia was harder than he expected, and that his sports life is over. At the end of the day, he gave it a fair go, but he wasn't cut out for it. Not for his beloved Manchester United, not for Dortmund, not even for the Australian A-League. By the way, just for a fun fact, I realized that 2 of his kids are named Olympia, Lightning Bolt, and Thunderbolt. That's creative, my friend. Now let's talk about why he failed as a football player. Well, let me explain. Bolt had severe limitations as a football player. He was very clunky in his movements. His ball control was clumsy. He moved like a drunk giraffe on ice. And his awareness and positioning were severely off. The only asset that he had was his pace. Let me explain this as a fellow runner. Bolt's biggest weakness in running is his starts, the first few steps that he takes, and he makes it up by his superhuman acceleration later in the sprint. In football, you're not gonna have an extra 80 meters to catch up on your sprint. Football is a game of limited spaces, and even in what we've seen in his football game, he looked quite slow with his movements. You see, a game of football has a lot more nuance than sprinting fast in a straight line. There's a lot of technicality and intelligence that you need to master, and that just comes with time. And let's not forget about competition. Professional football is quite cutthroat. There's literally millions of talented players around the world, all striving for limited spots on professional teams. Bolt was up against players who had dedicated their entire lives to the sport of football. You can't just start from your early 30s. And from Dortmund of all places. As a competitive hybrid athlete myself, I always find it fascinating when athletes switch between different sports. And this was an amazing case study, witnessing one of the best athletes of our generation go through this transition.